Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hello, and welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Dr. Kelly Bohnoff. I always trip up on names. Everybody knows that. So I hope I said that. We practice. From early childhood, Kelly Bohnoff experienced a deep devotion to vulnerable children, teens, adults, and families. As an adult, she continues to help them by sharing her knowledge of the power that each of us feels or has, not only to heal ourselves, but also our children, relationships, families, and the world. She communicates this information through inspiring messages of unconditional love, hope, healing, and transformation to any person, couple, and family experiencing the pain and suffering of family trauma and the drama that manifests in their daily lives. So, Dr. Kelly, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's a joy to be here.
So, in your bio, I obviously couldn't read a really long bio because I'd be talking for a long, long time about all your accomplishments and the things that you've done in your life. But tell us a little bit about you as a professional.
Yeah, so I ended up getting a master's degree in marriage and family therapy and community health nursing, and my PhD is in psychological foundations of education. But actually, that's just an umbrella term for I was a researcher, a statistician. I'm very interested in patterns and themes and ideas around families and what was going on. And so I did finish that degree in the late 90s, and my professional life unfolded. And then later on, I started a 501c3 called Josephine's Clinic with a student. We co-founded that for 8 years, which helped victims of human trafficking as adults to find basic care and needs when living on the street and going to the emergency room wasn't a place where they felt safe or supported or loved. And so in those 8 years, it was such an honor, and I learned so much about the themes around suffering, particularly around trafficking, as that was something that I had experienced in my own childhood.
Wow. No, thank you for that. And I know that you also have a book out. Maybe we could just wait a little bit before talking about the book, because we want people to know about that and where to get it and all that. Is it safe to say that your childhood maybe inspired the work that you're doing now?
Of course, and based on my experience, it's so interesting to me as life unfolds. I'm in my early 60s now, but as planned, my family and I parachuted in. So my parents and myself as the oldest, and I had 3 siblings. And when I was little, it felt as if we were all in this shark tank of energy, is the way I refer to it in the book, just this heavy energy of fear, overwhelm. And because through the spiritual lens, we came in with amnesia, not remembering what we had chosen to learn and to live and ourselves through, I had 3 particular impressions when I was a little girl that were very important, that really began the trajectory of my life as a human being, but also as a professional. The first was to keep my mother healthy. The second was to keep my father happy. And the third was to keep my siblings safe. And because I picked up those ideas, which were inherited from ancestral trauma, along with 3 very important themes that I noticed many of the children and teens and couples and families that I've had the honor of being with over the last 38 years, those ideas were I was unlovable, unworthy, and not enough. And I noticed that many of us pick up those ideas along the way, put them in our pockets, and carry them around with us, trying to navigate the world from the outside in. So looking at external cues rather than from the inside out. And so, of course, my mother's health, mental and physical health, led me into nursing. This idea of trying to keep my father happy, to keep things stable and secure into the home and keep siblings safe. That was where the marriage and family therapy interest came in. And of course, national certifications in trauma. And so I have spent my entire life trying to answer one question, which is, why are children being hurt by those who have the opportunity to love them and keep them safe? And so I've learned and lived through so much in my lifetime. And as I hit the wall at the end of the 2020 with the pandemic. And when I did, I had a complete breakdown mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, where I awakened to the idea, which I did not know, that we are energy. And as I recognized that I didn't have a family life, my family is life itself. And that third mind, body, spirit, now everything made sense. And the book is written called What's Going On with My Family? A Roadmap to Healing Trauma, Unlocking Your Hidden Power, and Remembering What is Sacred. It's based now on a holistic mind, body, and spirit perspective, which is we are souls and we are here to end the cycle of suffering, which I've noticed humanity is addicted to. We have an addiction to suffering, but it comes with, it comes to us in kind of this ancestral eons and eons of countless generations of humanity that have been attempting to try and awaken and remember who they truly are, which is sacred, worthy of unconditional love, devotion, and reverence. And so my journey, the hero's journey, which we're all on, I kind of realize now it feels like we're kind of the Navy SEALs of the universe, that every family on the earth is this beautiful constellation, combination, and configuration of souls that have a hidden power. And that hidden power is resilience, wisdom. And the minute I was able to understand that, as I turned back into the direction of my own family's trauma and the generations of trauma of physical, emotional, sexual abuse and abandonment and neglect and all of that, that once I turned into it from an energetic perspective, from a compassionate witness or neutral zones perspective, was when our family actually began to heal. So it's an exciting time to be alive on earth, because families can heal themselves from within if they choose, once they know that they are addicted to suffering and that they're energy and that there is an easy and simple way to heal. Now, our family didn't remember that we were traumatized, or it was, trauma is normalized in many families. And so I'm just bringing a little more light to the question, what's going on with my family? For those who are interested in seeing our families from a more empowered way.
Okay, thank you for that. As you know, my listeners are trauma survivors, so we're serving many of the same people. What about your personal trauma, either in childhood or as an adult, are you comfortable with sharing today without going into great detail? We don't need a lot of details, but we have all types of survivors listening. Like, who do you think would connect with you the most? Like, what's been one of the harder traumas in your lifetime?
I think one of the things that, particularly if those of us who had an opportunity to explore the energy of adversity in childhood. So we're exploring that energy. We're trying to understand how deep it is, how heavy it is, and then alchemizing that energy. I think for me, we've been referred to as a wounded healer at times, this kind of type of wounded child, wounded healer, divine child, some of these kinds of archetypes. And one of the things that was so healing and helpful for me was to begin to ask different questions that are of a more compassionate inquiry. So for instance, I began to ask myself not why did this happen? I asked, I wonder when I picked up the idea that everyone else's well-being was more important than my own. Because I believe that many of us get into this cycle and pattern where to survive, we've had to let go of our inner guidance system, our still small voice in order to survive. And so we have put, in my case, the needs of my mother, my father, and my siblings into the front seat, if you will. And so I lived my life just trying to juggle, is everyone happy? Am I being the perfect older daughter? And so I lost track of myself, my true self, very, very young. And so that one question, when did everyone else's needs become more important than my own, was very powerful for me. And when I did my life review, while I'm still here, embodied, that I realized that pattern had happened so young, I didn't realize I was in the pattern. So that pattern happened with friendships, it happened in my marriage, it happened with my older children. I've got 2 granddaughters now, and everyone in my life. How can I serve you? So one of the things I would encourage listeners and audience to consider is asking that question for themselves. I was in a self-destructive pattern through many coping mechanisms, many addictions, to keep the suffering in place. I used Patron, pastries, and purchases to keep myself balanced. And those coping mechanisms, once I realized that they were kind of destroying my mental, emotional, physical health and my spiritual connection, I moved into a pattern which took me a while to feel comfortable in, to self-devotion, so self-honoring. Where does self-love, self-trust, self-care, self-compassion, and self-forgiveness come in? I didn't know a thing about that, and I didn't know what love felt like for me personally, and so I didn't trust love at all. And in fact, I would say my relationship to life itself was very wobbly, because very early in my life, it felt to me as life was coming at me. In other words, I had to duck and dive whatever the next trauma was that was coming. And so for me, it was important to heal the relationship to life itself first. Is life for me? And then once that question was answered, yes, then I was able to move into a more in-depth know thyself, realizing I am life itself. And so we all love in action, and we're all getting an opportunity to know thyself within a family that is trying to know themselves, as for, in my case, the 6 of us.
Okay. So thank you. That was a beautiful way, that a lens of trying to make sense of the past and your family dynamics. You mentioned earlier that you were also a survivor of trafficking. Are you comfortable telling us a little more about that?
Right. So as a what's called in psychology a parentified child, I got really excited. A girlfriend, when I was 10 years old, invited me to her house for a sleepover. And because of all the chaos in my own home, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm just going to go down the street and I'm going to have a sleepover. And I'm super psyched about it. Well, I wasn't connected to my own inner guidance system, which I'm sure was raging at me, going, you do not want to go down the street. You do not want to go to the overnight. But I didn't listen, and I had limited connection to my higher self at that time. So I went on that overnight, and what happened was that the family themselves had been what I would call discovering, unfolding, experiencing, and just exploring this energetic dynamic of trafficking. And I had, of course, this is of thing. I think human trafficking of children is misunderstood by the media. That night, what I refer to as caught in an energetic net. They knew just by looking at me that I would not tell anyone, because they coerced and scared me to death They said if I said anything, they would come for my siblings, or they would, tell my parents or whatever. But what really had me kind of freezing in that particular experience was they threatened to hurt the girls that were in front of me. And for that reason, because I'm a protector in my psyche, there wasn't anything I wouldn't do to protect another. And they inherently understood that. And so for 2 years, those overnights were a place where occurred. And it wasn't until the age of 12 that I moved away from that. Our family moved away. But I held the secret of that experience. And I wonder often what happened to the other little girls. I was in school with many of those girls, and we would combine together as a little tribe, at lunch and other places. No one knew or understood what we were going through, but we did. And so, from a perspective of spirituality and energetics, part of the process of healing for me was going into the higher state of awareness and asking, was that a karmic or soul contract? Was I healing something from this lifetime? It really was about the kind of this giving away my own inner authority or inner power. In other words, rather than walking out the door in that moment, once I understood there was something dangerous going on here or trying to flee, I chose in that moment, as any child would, to do what she could to survive. And with the understanding I had, that version of little Kelly, she did an extraordinary job of being brave and staying alive. And I believe in my heart, and I have learned from other past life regression, that I had this similar event in another lifetime where I did not survive as a child, and I wanted an opportunity in this lifetime to move through the same energy and see if I could heal it and still remember my sacred nature, while at the same time bringing this book into the world. In other words, for this particular experience, rather than staying in a harmful psychic state or victim mentality, I was able to move into a harmonized state and a sovereign mentality, understanding the intricate nature of child trafficking. So I can speak deeply of the subtle dynamics of this particular trauma. And I believe it's been instrumental in helping me become free. So I have transformed fear into freedom. And that one particular opportunity to learn who I really am was extraordinarily important to me. And I consider it a gift to be able to heal from that and to help others who are ready to do the same.
So it's clear to me, listening to you, that you are really far ahead in the healing journey. You've done a lot of work and study. For the average listener, though, I'm thinking they're not quite at all those steps. And so what they will relate to the most, I believe, is maybe just before that healing happened, before you connected spiritually, energetically to those ways of healing, what did your symptoms look like? What were you struggling with? Like, how can people listening to you that are really struggling, I think if they can connect with you that way, knowing what the hard points were for you, it'll be easier for them to buy into the hope of healing. So for example, survivors, children either excel at school because school is the safe place and they just put their heart and soul into it. And then other kids can't focus at school. They're dissociating. They're exhausted. They're too sad, too anxious, whatever, and they can't focus. It's like, things like that. Can you relate to those kind of things? I'm guessing
Those
you
are the
can.
children and years that I spent 38 years with just as a professional. As a person, though, here is what I've uncovered or discovered so far about this. For me, trauma is any shock or distress to the mind, body, and spirit. It can happen at any time. And the way we respond or react to that trauma, the very first one, because traumas continue to echo in our lives due to the vibration of hurt and anguish from that very first trauma. And we unintentionally keep drawing traumas in because the universe doesn't speak human, it speaks vibration. So what I would say is that every child, every soul on this earth is experiencing trauma, coping with trauma, attempting to stay grounded on the earth in their own unique way. So one of the things that is so clear to me is that in our family and educational system specifically, we have a tendency to want to mold children instead of allowing children to unfold naturally. And so what I would say is that any symptom or sign that is attached to the story itself of what has happened in the past, I am unworthy, I am unlovable, I am not enough, I am not safe in my body, I am not safe in my mind, because most of the technology is distracting for children. Try and pull technology away from a traumatized child. That is their virtual reality. And so for myself, as I really tried to understand how did I respond to the trauma, I listed those signs and symptoms and noticed the patterns that were unique to me, and I honored that. We really have to know thyself. So for every person listening, I would say, you are a unique and universal expression of life. Now, there are several common things that we all go through, like the unworthy, unlovable, not enough. Our relationships with ourselves have a tendency not to be in the forefront. We don't take very good care of ourselves. We want to take care of everyone else. And so that is, for me, a clear sign that there is something, I call it the ABCs: alignment, balance, and connection, mind, body, and spirit. So I don't have to come very close to a child, or really anyone in the world these days. I can feel their energy that is not aligned, balanced, or connected as a whole being. And it's usually because we've picked up those particular ideas. And we are programmed, we're entranced before the age of 7. We're sponges as children, picking up all kinds of interesting information, right? So we're entranced or kind of hypnotized by our environments. We're enmeshed emotionally. We're entangled energetically. We're entrapped in systems that keep us distracted and afraid. Just look at the news. Parents come in and they're stressed for their day. Or if you're in foster care, 17 times because you can't hold a foster care placement, right? Or you're an adopted family. All of these beautiful mirrors, if you will, are, I call it the cosmic game of clue. So these beautiful clues around us if we're willing to see it. But most of us sit in a routine that is status quo. We want to do the same way every day. And there's usually some sort of substance involved to help us with our emotions. So for me, it was alcohol, opioids, lots of yummy carbohydrates. And then that one-click feature, buying things I didn't need. I don't remember buying things, just trying to stay busy. And of course, all of the streaming and all of that kind of stuff. So I just did a deep dive on what a natural day, a normal day, a typical day was for me. And I was shocked to notice what my patterns actually were and how I was trying to manage what I was calling my life, but really was just standing in place, waiting for the next shovel to the face. I just wanted the traumas to stop, and I couldn't figure out how to slow the momentum of those experiences until I added energy into the mix. And so once I did that, all of it became very clear from the moment of my birth to this moment with you, Karen. I can clearly see that families can heal with a holistic plan and just a little bit of hope.
beautiful. Yeah, I love that you shared some of the, I agree with you that we're all unique, and so our symptoms are not the same across the board, but there are some things that really we do see consistently, and you mentioned them, and that's the negative core beliefs like I'm useless, I have no worth, no value. And it's amazing how long we cling to that. And I think, I'm doing energy work now as well, both personally and working on certification for it. It was my missing piece as well to heal myself and to help, empower the healing in others. So anyway, what I loved about what you said, I do see that commonality about the core beliefs. And also, it's certainly true that survivors really have struggled until they're on their healing journey. It's not first nature to
hydrate free. And I have no impulse anymore.
Amazing.
Brought it all together. And so that is the book that I want to give everyone. Now remember, holistic means I did need to taper my medication. I did need to have physical therapy. Everything worked together. And so it's unique to you how you create your healing path. What I will say is I am so thankful to still be in this world, to share this time with you, and to co-create a message of hope to people when I truly was at the very end of wanting to be here.
I'm glad you did not exit out. I also had a period of life as a younger girl with wanting to end things. Our suffering sometimes can be really overwhelming. And it's really important that we find hope somewhere, somehow. And for me, it was at that time, I was tapping into my spirituality is what helped me. And I'm so thankful now that I'm tapping into the inner work as well, because it really is amazing on how it can quantum leap your healing. So that's awesome. So tell us a little bit on how you've taken all these tools and what do you do for your work now that highlights or enhances this work? Say a little more about that. I don't know if I asked the question very well.
No, that's all right. So the book just came out in March. So I describe myself as a recovering caterpillar. I was so asleep and then I went through the chrysalis. And so I'm just out of the chrysalis at this point, and my little wings, I'm just getting used to those. And so I'm doing these beautiful podcasts. And so the book talks about when I was a little girl, I would run away sometimes, and I would lay on the ground and I would look to the stars. And one of the exercises, actually all the exercises, depending on the chapter, it talks about look to the stars, which is stillness, thankfulness, affirmations, reflections, and showing up for yourself, your family, humanity, and the natural world. And so through the book, I've been guided now I'm in the middle of creating a library of about 150 resources for families and starting a YouTube channel to answer questions around these empowering messages of how families can heal at in a worldwide stage. So the days of being in the community, under bridges, in the jails, in the trap houses, I mean, all of the individual and familiar one-on-one, I believe after 38 years, I'm transitioning now into more of this more global ability. So anyway, things are being created right now in real time. And so for anyone who's interested in the book and staying on deck with when the YouTube channel will be starting and these resources, I just send everyone right now to onesacredfamily.com. And the book is what I have at the moment. And I am it's such a gift to be getting this beautiful download around this library and then the YouTube channel. As someone who's been in her 60s, I'm not really great with technology. So I'm learning how to put everything together in a way that families can get to easily and they can grab what they need when they need it. So a buffet of where someone might be in their particular journey, it'll be organized. If they're wanting to heal trauma, if they're wanting to unlock their hidden power of resilience, wisdom, and genius, or if they want to remember what is sacred, the library will be organized in that way. And guided meditations for families. That's the other thing. On YouTube, there wasn't a lot of guided meditations for families at the family level. And so those have been created and are already ready and waiting to be uploaded into YouTube. So there's just a lot going on at the moment.
Beautiful stuff, incredible work. So thank you for all you're doing for families. It's really beautiful. Any final wisdom you want to impart before we wrap up for today? So maybe just picture someone that's really not feeling very well. They haven't tapped into the healing you have. How would you recommend they get started? Maybe just getting your book?
what I would say is there's a couple of things. I'd like to leave an affirmation for those who individually are wanting just to be in a moment and not feel awful. And then I'd like to share encouragement to families themselves who may be listening. So the affirmation that was powerful for me when I was really struggling and still in pain and going through acupuncture treatments and doing all that, is I would close my eyes. So do you remember when we were in school, there'd be this stop, drop, and roll if someone was on fire? And so it felt like, to me, I was on fire. And what came to me was, oh, just stop, drop, and be. Stop and be still. Drop into 3 deep breaths and be in the moment. So whenever I was really in the ugly cry, stuck in the story, I would stop, drop, and be, and I would say and write over and over again until I felt better. I am safe, secure, strong, sacred, and sovereign. And I'd say it over and over again, and it really helped me. And then I put it on my mirror. The other thing that I would encourage with families is I encourage you by saying, within every traumatized family, there lies a hidden power, a sacred potential waiting to be remembered and awakened.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for being a guest with us today.
Thank you, Karen. It was an honor.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.